Don't let her touch the will. That's what little Noelle whispered, barefoot on the cold marble floor of a mansion too big for her grief, right as Veronica Monroe, the polished hospital administrator with perfect teeth and a colder smile, reached for her late mother's documents. Now, an 8-year-old black girl whispering legal advice might sound strange to some folks, but Noelle? Noelle had her mother's eyes and her mother's mind. Her stepfather, Dr. Charles Whitmore, didn't listen. Not because he didn't care. He did, in his own emotionally distant, spreadsheets and sympathy kind of way. But grief makes fools of men, and trust makes victims. Charles thought Veronica was helping. She brought lasagna. She offered to call the florist. She even found a counselor for Noelle, twice. That's how it started. But what Charles didn't see, what everyone missed, was the way Veronica moved like smoke, slow and soft and suffocating. How she sorted through the house, touching things she had no right to touch, how she said we when she talked about decisions that weren't hers to make. And while Charles drifted through board meetings and bedtime stories, trying to keep up with the weight of his new life, Veronica made herself comfortable. So comfortable she eventually moved in. "Just until the leak in my condo gets fixed," she'd said, smiling with those fake, sincere eyes. Yeah, that was the first leak. The second leak? It came when Noelle, thirsty one night, tiptoed downstairs and saw Veronica in her mother's office, photographing documents, flipping through folders, opening drawers like they were hers. That office had been untouched since the funeral. Her mom's lab coat still hung on the chair, and yet there Veronica stood, in silk pajamas, with her iPhone flash off. Noelle didn't scream, she didn't run. She watched. She remembered. See, Noelle wasn't just a quiet kid. She was sharp, like her mom, Dr. Celeste Dupree, wasn't just a renowned surgeon. She was a force. A woman who fought to build a medical foundation for underprivileged black communities, who wrote her own will and stored it in a safety deposit box downtown. And Noelle remembered the conversation they had, just weeks before she died. "If anything ever happens to me, baby, you go to Grandma, and you remember, not everyone who cries at your loss is on your side." Noelle did remember. That's why she went to Grandma Jean, and that's when the story started to shift. Turns out Grandma Jean knew something wasn't right, too. She'd gotten a strange call the night before Celeste's car accident. Celeste had sounded shaken. She said, "Something's going down at the hospital. If I don't make it to morning, check the files." But morning came without her. At first, Charles tried to keep everything together. But when Veronica slid that engagement ring on her finger, an awful, modern chunk of diamond that looked nothing like Celeste's vintage ring, and told Noelle, "You'll learn to call me Mom," the mask slipped. Still, Charles didn't see it. Not until Grandma Jean took him to the bank. That's when the will surfaced. The real one. The one Celeste had notarized months earlier, naming Charles as guardian, but putting full control of her research and estate in a trust for Noelle. The one that required him to stay in the family home to retain guardianship. The one Veronica never wanted found. Charles went pale, said something about misunderstandings and legal housekeeping. Noelle didn't buy it, and neither did Grandma Jean. But Veronica? She struck back fast, fired the family attorney and brought in her own, some slick guy named Paul Renner, who had a habit of representing powerful white men accused of quietly terrible things. And then she pulled the oldest trick in the book. She tried to send Noelle away, a boarding school in Vermont, already enrolled, already packed. "Noelle needs stability," she told Charles. "And let's be honest, this place holds too many memories." But Noelle wasn't just holding memories, she was holding proof. With the help of Ms. Dorsey, her science teacher, she started building a digital archive, photos, emails, timelines, documents. She even collected samples from Charles's food, suspecting Veronica might be drugging him. And yeah, lab tests later confirmed it. Low doses, just enough to dull his senses and keep him compliant. But here's the kicker. Veronica didn't stop there. She started cleaning house. Dr. Mariah Blake, Celeste's closest colleague, was suddenly removed from the hospital board. Marcus Ellis, a fellow black researcher, had his credentials questioned. One by one, the people who knew Celeste disappeared. And then, just when it felt like the whole world was gaslighting an 8-year-old girl, something changed. Charles collapsed during a board meeting. Emergency room, machines beeping, Veronica sobbing on cue. But guess who showed up? Grandma Jean, Ms. Dorsey, Marcus. And most importantly, Detective Rhonda Tate, a quiet, sharp woman who'd been watching from the sidelines, gathering just enough reason to dig deeper. Toxicology came back. Prescription sedatives in Charles's system. No prescription. And that wedding? The one planned to happen in the hospital room the next day? Didn't happen. Instead, Veronica got cuffed. Right there, mid-makeup, in front of the florist. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and attempted abuse of a minor. Charles woke up the next morning to a legal mess, but a clear mind. He apologized to Noelle, holding her hands and sobbing into them like she was the only anchor in a storm he never saw coming. And the will? It held up in court. Noelle stayed in the house. Celeste's foundation was saved. And Veronica? She sang like a canary during plea negotiations. Turns out, she'd done this before. Different names, different hospitals, always targeting powerful widowers, always pushing aside black women's work for her own benefit. But she didn't count on Noelle, didn't count on an 8-year-old with better instincts than most adults. 3 months later, Noelle sat in the boardroom of the Dupree Foundation, next to Charles, now fully sober and fiercely protective. "You ready to be our first junior trustee?" he asked. She nodded and said, "Only if I get my own business cards." They both laughed. Outside, Chicago's skyline lit up the night, but inside that room, justice had finally found its home. So here's the question, for you watching right now. What would you have done? Would you have listened to the little girl or brushed her off? Would you believe an 8-year-old over a polished adult in heels? Drop your thoughts below. Tell us where you stand. Do we trust too quickly? Do we dismiss children's voices too easily? And if this story moved you, made you angry, or just made you think, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories like this. Because sometimes the quietest voices carry the sharpest truth.